Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and this was an absolutely delightful conversation with a good mate of mine and four-time Australian Olympic water polo player, Thomas Whalen. We just had an absolute ball in this conversation. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did, and remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. All right, today's guest is a water polo legend, arguably the greatest water polo to ever come out of Australia. Representing Australia in 4 Olympic Games in 2000, 2004, 2008, and again in 2012, and over 330 test matches. His talent led him to captain the Australian team, guiding them to some of their most outstanding performances over many, many years. He played professionally for 15 years in Europe, playing for teams in Spain and in Italy. He's a dual bronze medalist in the World League and Commonwealth champion, and is recognised as one of the world's top water polo players. He went on to become the director and president of Water Polo Australia, and off the pitch, he's been instrumental in promoting water polo as the founder and managing director of Water Polo by the Sea, while also excelling in the world of business. For 10 years, he's been the CEO of the Rent-A-Space group of companies, overseeing one of Australia's largest privately owned self-storage companies. He's married to Elka Whalen, formerly Graham, also a multiple Olympic swimmer for Australia, and together they have 4 kids. He's a good mate, and it's a tremendous honour and a privilege to have him on the show. So welcome, and thanks for joining me on the Greg Bennett Show, Thomas Whalen. How are you, mate?
Oh, I'm fantastic after that. Thanks so much for the introduction.
Well, this was really great, mate. A good friend of mine, Brett Hawke, and I have been working together on Any Question, and it wasn't so long ago we were chatting about you, and I know Brett brought you onto the platform. And
that's right, yeah.
And he's like, yeah, my mate Thomas Whalen. I'm like, Thomas, I know Thomas. That's awesome. And then we just happened to bump into each other down the beach, Balmoral Beach, last weekend.
What a wonderful just bump in. We haven't been down to Balmoral in Sydney's beautiful harbour for quite some time, and there we go. We run into you from across the world. Who would have thought? And it's it's beautiful to be able to connect again.
I know, mate. Well, look, reading that introduction out, how does it make you feel now that the years have gone by a little bit and you reflect back? Does it become more special the further you move away from it, or what is it like to get that resume read back to you?
Yeah, I think it really does. I think when you're in the thick of really trying to go for something, to achieve something, there's a tangible something that you're going for, right? Yeah. You're going for a gold medal, or you're going for success with your team, and you've got really set goals. It's very easy to kind of forget about that journey along the way and putting into perspective the privilege that you're in every single day. And so when that's removed from you or taken away from you or some time ago, you get to look back and remember how special that moment was. And I think that's the challenge of anyone, right? Anyone who's focused and anyone who's really going after something, you can very easily forget the perspective and the joy and the journey along the way. But having that read back to me, it means a lot. It's I'm really proud of not only necessarily the accolades or anything, but more about, I think, the character that I was along the way. The ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, what you learn about yourself, what you learn about others. But ideally, you can look back at any career or any lifetime. I think I've got a long lifetime ahead of me. But you can look back and really, I think your proudest moments are those where your character's potentially been tested, or you can look back and be proud of the character and the integrity upon which you dealt with that journey.
Was it, I think back of sport myself, and you have such tremendous purpose when you're in this window of sport and you're looking at Olympic cycles and you're looking at world championships and there's such purpose. When you decide to give it all away, was that a hard transition for you, going from professional water polo, Olympics every 4 year, captain of the Australian water, like all of that, was that a difficult transition, or how did you manage that?
I think I was really, really fortunate. I was coming towards the end of my career, towards 2012. So in about 2009, I played in the World Championships. I think it was my 5th World Championships with the Aussie team. I was captain. I've been playing overseas in Europe. I had one more year, and I think that was in 2009, 2010. Decided to go across to Barcelona with my wife, Elka, at the time, and we fortunately fell pregnant with Nevada in Spain. So Nevada means a purity of white. And it was beautiful because I knew I was coming towards the end of my career, because my passion and my focus was starting to move towards other things, to that next phase in life. And it was really fortunate to be able to have someone to share that with, and someone like Elka, who had been through that journey herself and had gone through transition and retirement and, you know, the challenges that come with the purpose that you have in yourself tied to what you do or who you are in that space at that time in sport. And so it was a really special moment to go back to Barcelona, where I started my international career, to be able to enjoy that journey with Elka. She wasn't there way back when I first went across in 2001, 2002, to be looking forward to having our first child. But also in my mind, I knew I was getting passionate about business. I was getting passionate about the next transition and what that looked like. So we moved back to Australia after that in about 2010. And I had to establish a career outside of sport. Water polo, yes, it paid some money overseas in Europe, but it certainly wasn't going to set you up for retirement. And I think there's a benefit in that too, right? Because you've got to transition. So I studied a lot throughout my career. I took all of 9 years to get a commerce and a law degree.
Well done.
It was, I think it was probably the longest double degree of all time. By 2000, I think it was, if you got to 10 years, you had to start repeating. So that was, I started
really?
cramming it and going, no, I got to get this done, right? But going back to that, that final year, I really enjoyed that final year. I really made the most of it. I was aware of it. I was aware of the moments in training, the teammates, the opportunities we had living in Europe. And I really made the most of it. But as I said, my mind was shifting. I was ready to do something else. So I came back. 2011, started at UBS in private wealth, of all things, and that's what I thought I always wanted to do. Career in finance. That's what I'd study. That's what I thought of from a young period in my life. I thought, that's what I want. I want the big end of town, right? I want the big buildings, and I want all of those titles and things. And it wasn't necessarily everything that I thought it would be, and it wasn't necessarily an easy transition. In 2011, I was made redundant. Everybody in UBS in my category was made redundant, so I didn't take it personally. I thought, that's fine. But it was a good sign as well. I was kind of asking. I was actually saying, hey, Lord, can you give me a sign? Is this really what's in it for me? And I was made redundant, and it was just such a good feeling almost. It sounds counterintuitive, right? But it's like, great. The decision was made for me because I would have just ground it out. We're athletes, right? You'd grind it out. No, I'm going to make this succeed. And that gave me the opportunity to come back into the Australian team and make my way back into the Australian team out of 2 years out of the water internationally. So it was in 2012 this happened. We had our first child, then we had our second child, Edison. And so to get to the Australian team that I always took for granted, that it was just a given. I'm in the Australian team. I'm working for the next Olympics. I had to really work hard. And that gave me such a sense of satisfaction of getting back into the team as a leader again, and realizing that this was my last Olympics. So all of that together, I was really blessed that I knew that this was the last one. And so I really took the time to build the relationships in that last one, to enjoy the feelings, to walk out on the pool deck in front of 5,000 people in a world crowd, feeling those nerves and going, you know what, this is going to be one of the last times I get to experience that. So geez, it hurts right now. I'm nervous. As all hell.
Pressure is a privilege.
Pressure is a privilege,
100%.
And so when I transitioned, there's challenges with transitioning and finding what that was in terms of my next career. But I was really ready, and I was really blessed that I was ready to go.
I love that. I love, it's one of my favorite topics is, talking to people that have had to transition, whether that be from military or first responders or athletes, transitioning to, call it civilian life, if you like. And it's not easy. It's easy for some, harder for others. Those that listen to the show know that I spent a couple of years trying to find my way a little bit. Laura, she felt pregnant and that consumed her. But being able to have somebody to share it with, just like you did with Elka, and having that person that's strong behind you to keep you, it's okay. We can get through this. For me, you almost transitioning pre-2012, getting this little bit of a comeback so you can really be present and be grateful for the experience, and you didn't take it for granted. For me, that's one of the best transitions I've heard to some degree, because it's kind of like I've gone out, realised there's maybe a little bit more I can give.
That's it.
Pretty hard to do. Come back to the Australian team. They're probably saying you're old and you're washed up by now. You've already been to 3 Olympics.
That's it.
And then you got to go again. Let's do this. We've sort of started at the end a little bit there, but let's rewind the clock. because I'm always fascinated by how someone of your iconic stature now, whether you like it or not, it's a 4-time Olympian in water polo. It really puts you at this, it's pretty iconic. I want to rewind the clock and understand, where did your passion for water polo or competitive sports come from? Siblings and everything else, and how you grew up and how you ended up becoming one of Australia's all-time great water polo players. Take me right back.
Take you right back to the start, okay? So
Here we go.
Here we go. All right. No, I'll try not to take the transition too long, but no, I was one of 3, the youngest of 3. My sister's 6 years older than me. My brother's 3 years older than me. My brother and I were very competitive in everything that we did. But I think my mother and father really encouraged us to get into as many things as possible. We were doing all sorts of things. We were doing sports, absolutely, to keep us busy, to keep us out of the house probably, and to keep her sane, my mother sane, But also my mother threw us into music. She threw us into drama. She just threw us into as many activities as possible to keep us busy, and probably in a way for us to be able to find our passions. From a young age, we all swam. And so I think that gave us a really good foundation, that we just had this core fitness about us from a young age. So that naturally allowed us to succeed in different areas. I remember, year 1 or year 2 or something like that, winning the athletics carnival. It doesn't mean a whole lot now, but I was actually cleaning my parents' room up the other day and I found that old trophy. And I'm like, what? I've held this the whole time. But it meant a lot to me, I suppose, because it was very foundational in the sense that it gave me confidence, right? So my parents encouraging me, putting me through swimming and things like that, just gave me a baseline of confidence around your peers. And so we did everything. And I did swimming a lot. I did athletics. I did cross country. I had so many great people in my life growing up that invested the time in me in those various things. I remember my cross country coach, 3 times a week when we were in about year 4 or 5, he'd drive us to the golf course and we'd run around the golf course. I mean, that's kind of insane for a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, but he was passionate and we had this great crew and we really enjoyed it. And so I did that, and I did, as I said, all sorts of sports. I did cricket, I did swimming, I did nippers, loved life-saving. My parents would take me to the beaches no matter where it was. And so we did have a really big emphasis on sport. And I think it was just so healthy to be in and around different sports, not all individual sports. And it wasn't until I was about 12 or 13, my brother came across water polo at school. And I didn't even know what water polo was. I saw these funny hats that looked like they were underpants hanging up at the poolside, right? And I just followed him once. He went down to the club at Sydney University, and I followed him. And it was in a time of my life where kids started to transition. They started to, get bigger, deeper voices, all of that. And all of a sudden, you were one of the most successful swimmers. Doesn't matter how successful you were. It's just who's transitioning first.
Have you grown?
That's right.
Yeah.
And a lot of those were individual sports. And I just came across water polo. It's a team sport, and it was technical, and it was new, and it was exciting. And I just fell in love with the sport and the team aspect of it. And I was really fortunate to be part of an era that there were some good coaches in and around the place, really dedicated once again to where we were, even at a young age from under 14s. I remember my first tour in the under-14 state team was to Canberra. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. We get to tour.
I've made it,
all right? And I was in an all-boys school my whole life.
Yeah.
And there was a girls' team that we toured with. I'm like, whoa, jackpot. You've got me. So that's probably the start of my water polo career. That's where it all started.
I think I have a similar story when I got into triathlon around that same sort of 14, 15, 16. And I remember swimming at North Sydney Pool across the bridge here. And there was just a girl I liked in the pool.
Boom,
and that had me waking up at 5 a.m. every morning to turn up. And the days where she wasn't there, and I never spook to her, by the way. I was way too scared to talk to her. But I remember the day she didn't turn up, you'd almost be like, your workout would suck, right?
Totally. I can relate to that. I remember the same thing with swimming. I was there because they had girls that would swim. And I remember my first girlfriend, right? Yeah. Her name was Kim Duff. And she broke up with me. And because I was an all-boys school, I didn't know what to do. We hung out, right? Yeah. And I'm swimming. I'm focusing on my swimming. And she broke up with me. She said, no, I won't tell you why. I won't tell you why. I'm like, no, tell me why. And it slipped out of her mouth. She goes, oh, you're too frigid. And I'm like, I went home to my mother and I said, Mum, What does frigid mean?
Yes, for our American listeners, I'm not sure. Do we know? I don't know. Is that a global
Frigid,
word?
well, frigid just means that you're
not putting out.
You're not putting out. As a 10-year-old, I mean, I didn't even kiss the girl. I didn't even know what you were supposed to do. So it was quite funny. But yes, maybe there's something in that for coaches of junior athletes.
Yeah.
Just get boys and girls together and make it fun.
The boys will keep showing up. I'm telling you, it's that simple. I love that. I love that your parents put you into a multitude of sports. I think you and I were talking at the beach the other day about this. We see a lot of parents getting heavily involved in their kids right now and going, they're gifted. Like we all have gifted kids, right? I mean, you probably do actually because you're both multiple Olympians. But anyway, and it's kind of like we put so much pressure on them. And it's at the end of the day, sport is meant to just be play. It's meant to be social. It's meant to test
100%.
yourself. And there's so many life lessons that you can learn through sport.
100%.
Winning, failure, all of that. And it's in a safe environment to be able to do it. And to be able to go experience like you have. And then once you decided to pull the trigger and go, water polo's for me. Tell me about that moment. Like when did you realize I'm pretty good at this? Like, this actually could be something for me. How old were you and what was that like?
Yeah, so I was probably about 13. So I'd transitioned. I'd started playing water polo about 12. And by about 13, everything I did in my life almost was like, this is the perfect sport. I've got life-saving nippers in there. I've got the cardio of athletics or long-distance running, cross-country, and I've got a swimming background. It all kind of came together, and I saw this as a global sport.
Yeah.
I really just loved it. Yeah, I loved the technical skills. I loved the team aspect. There was so many. That was difficult, right? Because swimming is... It's about your time, right?
And it's all about you.
It's all about you.
Yeah.
That's
You're
right.
in a lane, no one's touching you. It's a whole different world. Yeah.
So it's kind of negatives and positives because like, why won't you get up and do this kind of thing? But you got to work all of those. It becomes this 4-dimensional sport almost.
Yeah.
So I was about 13 when I got selected, as I said, in that under 14 state team, and we started to train. And then the next one was probably at about 15 years of age. I was selected in the under 17 national team. And we got to travel as a national team, junior national team, across to Europe. Wow. I'd never been to Europe, right? Never even knew it existed, right? Studied a bit in history. But we went to Hungary, the home of water polo.
Wow.
And we got to see the national team playing and training against them. And then we got to train afterwards, right, with the national junior team of Hungary. And it was just... my eyes were just wide open. I'm like, this is the sport for me. I love this. I could see there were professional leagues in Europe. I could see I just fell in love with Europe. Yeah. We were in Hungary, then we were in Croatia, then we were in Slovenia in our first tour. I'm just like, this sport has me. Yeah. I just love it. I could see my future in this sport and was just captivated by it.
Did you find the level was substantially better than Australia when you went there? Was it like, whoa, we're not even, or could you play? Did you feel like you guys?
Yeah, we had a fantastic coach at the time. He was out from Hungary and he was a successful player himself. He was a world champion and an Olympic medalist.
What was his name?
István Gorgenyi, Dr. István Gorgenyi. Yeah. And he was our first coach in that junior national team and he put together a program for us in the lead up to that first tour. And he put together a style of play and it was more than just grinding away at your fitness. And yes, it was a step up in the level, huge step up when we first went over there. But at the same time, by virtue of how hard we'd worked and how smart we'd worked, we never saw ourselves as so far below the Europeans.
Wow.
And we had some big blowout games against, the Spanish and the Hungarians, etc. But I think it gave that team and that group of guys a real taste for what success could look like. And that same group of guys, we went across eventually to the under-20 World Junior Championships. And we worked hard. It was another coach at the time because István went on to be the coach of the Sydney 2000 Olympic gold-winning team.
Wow.
So it's kind of after those moments you realise how good you had it, right?
Yeah,
Your coaches were in the influences.
And who was that? Who was their gold-winning team?
So that was István Gorgenyi, so the Aussie women's team.
Yeah.
So that was
their
first gold medal.
Yeah, that's the first ever women's water polo.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Then we had another coach, a Russian background. He was a gold medalist as well, Erkan Shagayev, and he was a hard coach, right? Really hard.
Eastern European, hard-ass coaching. Yeah,
that's it. And, really ground us away, but we ended up getting a silver at the Junior World Championships in 2020, in 1999.
So you made the final of the Junior World Champs. Who was that up against?
So that was up against Italy, and we'd beaten them 3 times out of the 5 times we'd played them. So it was a devastating loss.
Yeah.
But once again, you look back in perspective.
Yeah.
Australia had never done that before. Australia had never won a medal. Australia, the best they got was 4th, which was fantastic still. Yeah, I was very blessed to have good coaches and leaders along my journey from a young age.
So then, you know, those junior and under 23, then the big stepping stone, Olympics 2000. Home Olympics, you know, we're sitting here in your office in Wallara in Sydney. Like literally we're 5 kilometres from Homebush Bay where the Olympics are. It was a kind of, for all of us that were in sport, that was the holy grail.
Absolutely.
2000 Olympics. I knew Elka, your wife at the time.
Yeah.
We were training together over in Manly Beach.
That's right.
And I was trying to make the Sydney Olympics, and I thought I wasn't a shoo-in, but I thought I was a pretty good chance. I missed the team. Elka makes the team. Tell me about your experience making the Olympics for the very first time. What was that all like?
It's funny. It's more when you go back, you know, at the start we were talking about perspective down the track. I think at the time I was young. I was 19 by the time I made that team.
That's young.
And I was so focused on success. You know, from a young age, everything was about success and building up towards success. And it was a huge step, and I was, you know, so over the moon, yes, by being selected. I was the youngest player in the team. I had to work really hard. I moved to the AIS in Canberra for 2 years. So got out of school, went there 18, 19. And that was a big step up because you've got these adults, right? There's guys there that are prolonging their careers to try and get to Sydney 2000.
Yeah.
The Aussie men's team, unfortunately, didn't qualify for the 1996 Olympics. So they hadn't. So there's guys that have missed out on 8 years of Olympics. And so there was a lot of competition there. But I remember, just working hard, focusing so hard and trying to make sure that nothing was getting in the way of me, firstly getting selected and then success thereafter. And I remember being selected, but you're so focused on that success that I don't think I probably realised the magnitude of it.
Ticking a box.
I was ticking a box, that's right. It's this is just what I got to do on the journey. That's ticking a box because it's more about what comes after that, right? And I remember walking in though, and you're focused, you're training hard. Everyone talks about the Olympics, how big it is, but the Olympics beforehand, I was 15, it was 96, it was a long way away. You don't really take in how big that is until you walk into the opening ceremony. And the opening ceremony, 110,000 fans.
Home Olympics.
Home Olympics, your family's there, you know, everyone's going crazy. That's the moment where it was just like, wow, this is pretty big. You know, this is huge. But once again, you've got to be able to focus and switch straight away into, no, I'm here for
Was water polo the second week? Was it second week?
It was the second week back then,
because swimming is always the first week.
Yeah, swimming's always had it good, right? They get to go out and party.
Well, they never get to do the opening ceremony.
That's true.
So.
That's
and
true.
I actually, when you do the opening and the closing's like whatever.
Yeah.
The opening's actually a real thrill. So I actually do feel for the swimmers. They never get to do the opening ceremony.
That's true, but don't feel too bad for them,
no,
right?
I don't feel bad for them. They get to just work out, do their little sprints, and then they're done, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm taking away. I'm taking the piss. But so you get to the Olympics, you do the opening ceremony. How'd you go in that first Olympics?
We ended up getting 8th, and that was a disappointment for me. Also because of how we were leading into those Olympics. I just know the team, and I didn't have confidence in where we would land. You can just tell by who you're playing. We'd have lots of close games, and we'd lose it in that last 1 or 2 minutes. And that, to me, in retrospect, was really a maturity of the team, or the confidence of the team wasn't there.
To be able to finish it off.
That's right.
It's a big difference.
So you have the real highs of being there, right, and a part of it, but then you have the lows of not achieving as you'd want to, and the expectations you probably have around you as well. And you see all of those gold medalists and Australian teams doing better than ever, and you're not a part of that. Well, yes, you're a part of that, of course, but you know what I mean.
Everybody's celebrating around you, and you feel like, oh, should I even be at this party? I'm kind of
that's it.
Yeah, I get
exactly.
that. But look, then you go on, and I don't want to take light of all the Olympics you went to, but going 2000, then again in 2004, 08, 12. It's outstanding. What was it about your game that kept you in teams? What made you first stand out as a 19-year-old to be selected in 2000? You know, you're a 6'5" strapping man. you know, obviously you're strong. Was it your speed, agility, tactician? What was it about your game that you think kept you in these teams and made you such a great water polo player?
That's a really good question. I've never thought of that. I actually think it was also a factor of all of the things that made me the player that I am outside of water polo. So all of the aspects that I had growing up, all of the different sports that I had, even the way that you study and learn and you put pressure on yourself in various aspects in life, I think it was a lot of those factors, because from the first 2000 Olympics until 2012, I'd really morphed into a different player, and I'd had different roles in different teams at different times. I was a fast player at a young age because of my swimming background, so that really helped me in terms of counterattack. Funnily enough, my nickname was Skeletor, so I wasn't big and strong at that time. So I had to be...
They're big boys, the water
polo
players.
They are big boys, exactly. They're really big boys, the Montenegrins, the Serbians, the Croatians, Russians. Yeah. And so I was really more of a swimmer, more agile. I was a centre back because I could be agile around that really big guy in the middle and try not to break your nose or lose,
Yeah, your nose doesn't look too bad. Do you ever break it?
Oh, I did break it. Yeah, it's got a little bit of a... I broke that eye socket as well once, just before 2008. So there's a fair bit that goes on. But yeah, look, I think it was just a resilience and a love of the game. And I had different experiences with different teams throughout my career. And by virtue of that, I had to play different roles. So it was just being resilient and always... playing your part in the team at that time, even if it wasn't the part that you wanted to play.
And did you find, you did 2000 Olympics, then you headed off to Europe. When did you start first playing professional? When was your professional contract?
So my first professional contract was actually, 2002.
Okay.
I moved to Barcelona.
Yeah, and so that allowed you, when you talk about professional water polo, that allows you to play full-time all year round.
Yeah.
And is it just played in Spain, or like the leagues that you play, are they within countries or are they across all of Europe? Because I know...
Yeah, all across Europe. So it's kind of like you think about football, Champions League, so they've got their own leagues, the Italian League or the Spanish League, and then they've got Champions League and they've got a version of UEFA. Just obviously not as much money involved or people
but it's
involved.
Still big. But
still big. So when I went across to Barcelona, they have a great league there. It's full time. You get given an apartment, some cash. You've got a pool that's literally on the beach at Barcelona. Like, where else would you want to be in life, right? If you love your sport. Yeah. And then we got to play in the Spanish league, but also in the Champions Leagues as well. So we got to play all across Europe against the best teams and the best players in the world.
Did you find that really it helped your game? I mean, because obviously leaving Australia and going and playing the Europeans on a weekly, daily basis.
100%. Yeah. It's later on in my life, when I was president of Water Polo Australia, I was really trying to articulate that to Australian clubs and to the Australian system. Mm-hmm. And you take for granted what you've been through and what the system here hasn't necessarily been exposed to. Over there, when we talk about high performance, you've got a team, full-time, all professional, all turning up 10 times a week, doing the weights, doing the swimming, doing everything together, playing once or twice a week in Champions League or the Spanish League at the time, and then training against other clubs. You just can't get that here. So, and you've also got some of the best players in the world as well in your team. So even if you're the best here in Australia, you may have one or two of the best in Australia, but you won't be exposed to 4, 5 or 6 of the best in the world, really pushing the limits.
You're music to my ears, mate. I've said this both to the Australian and US triathlon federations, is don't just get your athletes swimming and testing them in velodromes and on the bike and running around tracks. It's like there's nothing better than racing and racing the best in the world often. Race. 100%. And to your point, water polo, play against the best any chance you get. There's nothing like it, right? There's nothing that'll test you beyond where you've been before. That's the only thing that works. So when you look at the span of your career, which I would assume in water polo is pretty long, 15 years at the highest level, what have been some of the really great standout moments? It sounds like Sydney was a standout, but it was a little bit, maybe you skipped over it, probably because of youth. But what were some of the really great standouts of your career?
I think the great standouts, 2008 Beijing Olympics, we had just such a strong team, and it had the backbone of that juniors team that I talked about that had success at the World Junior Championships. And we were there. We were really there. And I got to captain that team, and it was a real privilege, and it was an honour, and I really took responsibility of that, of the relationships I forged in that team leading into that Olympics. And I genuinely believed, and I think there was genuine belief in the team that we would succeed. And we started off well. We played against Greece in our first game, and that was a do or die game. And the Greeks, great team, great history. and we played well, and we started well, and we beat them well. And that really set us up for a good Olympics. The challenge was we lost thereafter to Spain, but we had 3 more games. We had to play Hungary, we had to play Montenegro, and I think we had to play Italy. We beat Italy from memory, but then it was Hungary and Montenegro. All we needed to do, because of the for and against and everything, all we needed to do was was win those games. And against Hungary, in the final second, one of our goals was disallowed, and so we ended up drawing. I think we were the only team at the time drawing or losing by 1 to Hungary, who went on to win the gold medal.
Wow!
So that was a real low point, but a high point as well that we were there. We had to then play Montenegro next, and I believe we had to win that game by 1. We drew 6-6. So it's your highest of highs and your lowest of lows at that same point. If I can just quickly go to 2012, probably my biggest high, at least with the Australian team, was we went into that Olympics. As I said, I had to work really hard for that one. We had some young players, we had some older players, we had a really good mix of guys, but the first round games, we weren't doing well. We got beaten by Croatia by 3 goals. We were down and out, basically, and we had to come up against Greece again. Greece was the do or die game. And some things weren't happening in our team, in extra man, in extra technical aspects of the game. So I pulled the team together and said, right, we're sitting down, we're going through every single goal that's been scored against us to date in these Olympics, goal by goal. And you're putting your hands up, and we're poking the fingers at each other, and we're gonna get to the bottom of what's going on here. And it was just such a good meeting, not because I called it, not because of my ego, but because we had created an environment in that team that was willing to put their hands up.
Trust.
And in that meeting, the youngest player on the team put his hand up and he said, you know what? I really don't understand what we're doing in extra man defense in this aspect. Now imagine being the youngest player in a team of older guys, right? And saying that in the middle of the Olympics. And that was one of my proudest moments, that our youngest guy had a voice enough to put himself out there. And from that, some of the other guys actually put their hands up and said the same thing. We went out, we beat Greece by 5 goals. We played the best game we'd ever played in the Olympics, I believe, under pressure as well. And that got us through to the quarterfinals. And it was just such a satisfying moment of, as a team, as an individual, as a leader, as a group, all of us could really go through that together and succeed. Now we went on and unfortunately we lost to Serbia. We played 3 perfect quarters as well. We were up 4 goals, up 5 goals. They won the gold, didn't they? Serbia. They ended up getting the bronze in that one, but Croatia won the gold. But they went on to get the gold the next Olympics.
In 2016, yeah,
that's right.
I've been doing my homework, but I'm not quite.
I'm impressed, right? I'm impressed. And they came over us in the end. Yeah. And to their credit, they did come over us and they beat us. But it was, once again, it was the highest of highs and then the lowest of lows. But that's what I hold my hat on, is really that team, the leadership. And even though we didn't get the gold medal, there was a gold medal moment in there for me.
Were most of the Aussies playing in Europe by this stage, in teams as well, in clubs over the seas? Yeah,
I think our most successful Australian teams have always been when the most amount of players are playing in Europe.
And getting over there.
And or in the USA and the NCAA competition as well.
Yeah.
But because going back to what we were talking about, it just provides that level of competition, that level of training, that environment, which is so far ahead of what we can produce here.
Yeah. How do we go against the Yanks?
The Yanks, they've got our number more recently, but we had a great rivalry.
We always have in swimming. That's why I asked.
Absolutely.
I didn't know water polo being a bit of an extension from swimming.
Well, I mean, it really is. It's the 2 non-Europeans, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so we're kind of friends of sorts, but we battle hard.
Yeah.
Gee, we had some good battles. I remember we had training. So they had a coach, Ratko Rudic, who was former Yugoslav. He's also coached Croatia since to Olympic gold medals, and he's the godfather of coaching, right? But he was hard.
Yeah.
And then we had the Russian coach, Urkichigov, and he was hard. And I remember being over in California, and we'd both done weights beforehand. So we'd done an hour of heavy weights. We were in this real loading phase. And then we got in and we did an hour and a half to 2 hours, I think, of our own training. And then we came together at the end for the final hour of a scrimmage, of a game together. We're exhausted. This was probably like the 10th day into a camp, right? We're just hating the world. Everyone's tired and sore. And we went in there and we're playing hard. And I remember poor Peter Hudnut, I got angry with him. at one point towards the end of the game, and I lashed out and I hit him across the top of the eye and drew a bit of blood. And they finally called the game off. You know, everyone kind of came in and there was testosterone going. They finally called the game off. And in true typical spirit, right, of Aussies in the US, we're hard, we're competitive. 2 nights later, we'd gone out. We had a few beers together on the Terps.
Yeah.
And the guys came up and they said, you know what? It was wrong what you did, but we're kind of happy you did it because at least it called training off.
You swung a punch at one of us,
that's
but
right.
we were glad it
ended.
ended.
And they're like, yeah, and Peter probably deserved it as well.
I love that. See, those stories that I really love. We've talked a bit about the Olympics and again, Australia and US. With your professional, playing for Barcelona, and you also believe played in Italy.
That's right, yeah.
And how'd you go in those, leagues?
Yeah, so in Barcelona, I loved it. I played in a team, then I moved to another team the year after, a team who had some older guys in there who, they were my idols basically. These were guys that succeeded they'd been Olympic champions, and all of a sudden I got to join that team. And I didn't speak Spanish too well, they didn't speak English too well, and that was a really defining moment for me. I was over there by myself. I felt a little bit lonely, I suppose, at the time, a bit challenged, but just had a mindset to say yes to everything. I'd go out to dinners, not understanding what they're saying or anything, but just get out of your comfort zone and just make those relationships, make those efforts. And there were so many times I didn't understand anything that was going on. But then, and so I loved that, and we had great success with that team. I came back for a year, did studies, and that's when I met Elka, actually. 2004 Olympics, met Elka. And we were hanging out for quite some time, and eventually, I think she said yes to going out with me 7 months later. I put the ultimatum to her. I said, right, can't do this anymore. We're not just friends anymore. But then not long thereafter, got an opportunity with an Italian contract. And I'd always wanted to go to Italy. I just knew that was the top league at the time.
Yeah.
It was the most professional. And said yes, and we were going to make it work long distance. I remember getting over there. It was this dreary, wet day and landing in Genoa, this kind of industrial town of sorts, and going straight to this media conference. And I've got a Spanish background. I could start to understand Spanish. Went in there. I didn't understand a word. I thought, Latin background, I'll know what's going on.
It's all kind of the same, isn't it?
Not a word. I knew none of the guys in the team, didn't know the coach. And it was, I was put in this hotel room for the first week.
Oh, you're lonely, man.
And it was, it was really lonely. And we had this pool as well. And it's, unfortunately, the leagues are on over winter there, right? So it's cold as well. And this pool had a balloon over it. So it was always wet and dark. And we had a coach that just, he loved that Ratko Rudic that I mentioned before, right? The long, hard swim sets. And so it was hard. And the same thing, learning a new language again, all of those things. But it was the same thing. It's like perseverance. It's only through those hard toils that you get to learn where are my limits and how can I push through those limits? And they're the character defining, character building. We were long distance as well, so I didn't have someone there by my side to support me. But it was actually the most liberating and enjoying aspect, I think, of my water polo, because it was really putting me under pressure. I actually ended up having probably one of the best seasons. I think I was second highest goal scorer in that Italian league, and then went on to sign a 3-year contract with a team that I looked up to, and it really opened up a new level of water polo for me.
Wow, that's awesome. It sounds so dreary. And I had similar experiences throughout my career racing for a team in Czech Republic.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And this was right after this is 95, 96, only a few years after the walls come down, and staying in this old university. And it was the dark corridors with the flickering lights,
yes.
just like in the movies, right?
That's it.
And I was there on my own, staying in these dorms, and and I had to do this race, and there was another race 2 weeks later, but I just stayed in this dorm on my own, and there was this little cafeteria down, just the whole thing. But what you picture is just kind of like, you got to go through these times, and as part of the whole experience, it's not all 5 stars and glamour. It's
no way. And I mean, you see it as an athlete, right? Yeah. Everyone sees the outside, the glamour of the Olympic Games and the World Championships and all of these. It's not glamorous at all, especially when, we toured so many times to Serbia, to war-torn, Croatia at the time when it had only just been a few years out of the war, to Slovenia, to Russia. I mean, some of these places in Russia,
dark
just
and gloomy,
dark and gloomy, and they're just hard, toiling camps. But you look back at them and you go, that was awesome, right?
In hindsight, part of who I am now.
That's it, 100%.
Yeah. And so you mentioned some of the low times you've had, briefly. They were kind of combined with your highs. Was there any massive lows where you had to dig yourself out? And I guess on that, if you did, how did you do it?
Yeah. I think actually, funnily enough, it was signing that 3-year contract with that top club.
What's the name of the club?
It was called Savona, Rally Nantes Savona, up in not far from Genoa, up in the Ligurian coast in Italy. And that put a lot of expectation on myself because it was a big contract, and it was a big team, and it had a big history, and it had some big name players in there as well. And when I went in there, it was a different kind of a feeling, right? I've been young and resilient, and I can take on the world. Exactly, everything. And going into that team, it was like all of a sudden my role was different. My role was very different to all of the roles that I'd played up to that, as an attacker, a goal scorer, the point guard, so to speak, in the team, making the decisions. So that was a really difficult transition professionally in terms of water polo that I felt I just wasn't. I wasn't performing at my expectations, and I felt I wasn't performing in the eyes of the expectations of others as well. And that's a difficult place to be in, right? I'm sure you've been in that grind here. You kind of, you work hard, you work hard. It's that imposter
syndrome, right? You're kind of like, I don't belong here. What am I going to do? So how did you get yourself out of that? Like, what did you do? You just keep turning up?
You just got to, I think at the very start, you got to keep turning up. You got to keep turning up. And you got to be careful, though, not to try and change who you are or change your game fundamentally. You got to remember what got me to here. What is it that got me to here? And I think I really pressed into the relationships in the team. I pressed into the aspects of what I loved about water polo, what I loved about being in Italy. And so trying to take the pressure off, everything was about that game on that Saturday and me performing.
Right.
Because when you push it too hard, that you're trying to focus too much on the outcome rather than the inputs, that's when you're going to fail, right? Whereas when you shift that and think of the inputs and the processes and the joy in that journey, then the pressure's taken off. And I loved the fact that when you can come out of that and you can start performing, that it makes it so much sweeter, right? The harder it is, it makes victory so much sweeter.
Did you have somebody in your corner then helping, because you're still fairly young at this stage, and it's easy to sit back now and go, it's about the process, not the outcome, right? And we do. We all have this wisdom as we get older. But when you're in it, you're still heavily conscious of going, I got to perform. They paid me all this money, and the team's got to perform. And how do I fit in with these guys? I don't even speak the language. Did you have somebody tapping you on your shoulder saying, hey, focus on the process, focus on your skills, focus on the enjoyment of the game and why you like to do it? Was there anybody that you had in your side, or were you kind of just figuring it out on your own?
That's a good question. In hindsight, I think that was probably a missing piece in that time. I was overseas, so you're not necessarily calling back and relying upon your mentors or anything that you've got here. So I didn't necessarily have as much of that support network. But what I did get to do was lean on that when I came back into the familiarity of the Australian team and being amongst that. And at a certain point, we got this great team sports psych for the Australian team. Jonah Oliver, he went on to head up the AIS sports psych division, I think, and he's been very successful. He works with some of the top golfers in the world now, greatest athletes, and I can see why. And he was able to really support me through the team in just putting things into perspective and what you're focusing on and how you're focusing on it and the inputs, really focusing on the inputs. But it's a good point you raised, because I think it's an element that I didn't have enough of growing up, and that is really the emphasis on the sports psych side of things rather than just the physical side of things.
I think you and I are almost the pre-generation before sports psych has become very mainstream.
Absolutely.
And everybody's got a sports psych, or maybe not even a sports psych, a strong mentor, somebody that's just going to keep you in the ring and keep empowering you. And I think, you and I were talking at the beach the other day, we were talking about the importance of mentoring, and we've decided, hey, we're at the age where now we got to be the mentors to the youth.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate to be able to have conversations with a few young people that reach out and say, hey, Greg, come here. And if it's just once a month, just talking to them and just saying exactly what you're saying, right? Just guiding a little bit, because I think especially when you're going over to Italy, you don't speak the language, and you're signing these and all of this. It's intense and it's pressure.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have somebody with you, I think this is where I think federations can actually spend a bit more time on. Look, these are still young people. They're in their late teens, early 20s, still trying to figure out life, and how do we help them? I want to shift gear a little bit. Your career, outstanding. Your passion for water polo is it just resonates, right? The way you tell your stories and just the way you're smiling, and just you then shift out of the sport, and you've gone on to be the director and president of Water Polo Australia. You've started Water Polo by the Sea. Tell me a bit about that. Firstly, what is Water Polo by the Sea?
So Water Polo by the Sea, while I was playing, actually 2012, I just always had this. I didn't think water polo was ever promoted properly. I think water polo is this sport that when people go and see that, not many people have heard about it, right? But they haven't really seen it, or they may have seen it at the Olympics on the TV kind of thing. And I just kept hearing people would come to the game and go, "Oh my gosh, that game is amazing. That's awesome, live. Like, how do you guys do that? How do you egg beat? How do you get up so high? How do you take those hits? How fast are they? What, 80 kilometers an hour? They throw that ball at the goalkeeper? Like, all of these things are amazing, like visually. And the guys, they're fit guys, fit, good-looking guys. The girls, they're fit, strong girls, right? And so I just thought that had never been captured in water polo.
Gladiators of the pool.
Gladiators, I like it. That's the next one. Gladiators in the pool by the sea. So I never thought that had been captured. And so I thought, right, let's do this. 2012, I don't know how I got the idea, but I'm like, oh, that's right. The USA team were coming out, and I thought, right, I went to the federation. I said, give me an opportunity. I'm going to host a game for us, and I want to make an event of this. And they said, yep, right, go for it. It's yours. I went to Bondi Icebergs, which is an iconic pool down by the beach.
Bondi Beach here, yeah.
Bondi Beach is just, I think it's one of the most beautiful beaches and pools in the world, right? Yeah. And I went to them and said, look, I got this idea for an event. USA is coming out. They were coming out in like 6 weeks' time, I think it was. I said,
not much time.
Not much time. And we were in hard load training as well during that time. And I had my second child by then, Edison. So
how do you do it?
He did everything right. But once again, it taught me about your capacity. Yeah. And I remember it was about 5 weeks straight. I probably had about 4 or 5 hours sleep a night kind of thing. But put it together and put on this event, and I almost felt like a fraud because I was selling this idea. I didn't know what this event was going to be like, right? I'm selling the idea of what it would be, and it was a success. People turned up. We got celebrities there. We got TV, news, cameras, and everything there, and it just took off. And people were in awe of these guys, USA versus Australia by Bondi Icebergs.
On the ocean. It's a rock pool, everybody. So in the US, in Sydney, we have a lot of these 50-metre pools that are carved into the side of our cliffs right on the ocean and in the rock area. And in fact, my whole swim carnivals, what we call swim meets in American, but swim carnivals in Australia, we always went down to Harbourwood, and that was the 50-metre pool, and the waves would be crashing over, and if you got lane one, you'd be getting crushed by the waves. And anyway,
exactly.
So it really is, to your point, this iconic pool where you're on the ocean, one of the most iconic beaches in the world. And you managed to grab all the TV, massive crowds, and you pulled it off all in 6 weeks.
Pulled it off in 6 weeks. And so that's where the idea grew. I thought, it's a success. So went on to do that number of years. 1 year we did it. The waves were huge. There was a storm that whipped up. And it went viral as a result because the referee fell in the water too. It was so good. It was perfect. And there were, some of the people were saying, no, should we cancel it? And all the players were like, nah, hell no, let's go for it. And it was just awesome. And ended up doing one in Portofino in Italy, and that was a challenge. I thought we were bureaucratic here. I mean, they're bureaucratic in Italy, right? And so in the water at Portofino, another one we did in Sydney Harbour, in front of the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House, which was huge against Italy. So that was my passion of seeing the sport promoted in a different light. And I think it's resonated with the world because you have a lot more beach water polo going and events similar to that.
Oh, very well done, mate. I remember, I think when we first met, was probably you'd done one or two of them, I think, by that stage. It was a couple of years.
Yeah.
And just a fascinating idea. I think we even were talking about putting a triathlon around it and making it part of that kind of...
A festival, maybe at Barangaroo or something like that, Sydney Harbour, yeah.
Have you thought about doing that anymore? Or where is, water polo by the sea now?
Yeah, so I've got people who want to do it. I've got organisations who want to do it, and it's really about committing to it. So I've started at least putting the thought process on of what it looks like to bring it back.
Well, let's do an international one. Chris McCormack, if you're listening.
Come on, Chris.
Mac is doing his Super League. Maybe there's a way we can incorporate the water polo by the sea with Super League. And
definitely.
Because it is outstanding to watch. I've actually had fun watching some of the YouTube, getting ready for this chat, and it really is an outstanding sport. Okay, so... By now, you've got a couple of kids. Did you go straight into becoming CEO of the storage unit company?
Self-storage. So I started off actually in a consultancy role, rolling out some new tech in the business. My brother was the general manager at the time. My father founded the business. And I wanted to do my own things. I had an ego about me, right? Yeah. That was like, no, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to go into private wealth and investment banking and all these other things. And my father said at the time, he's like, look, that's okay if you want to do that. I want you to pursue that stuff, but I also want you to get an understanding of the business so you know it, and if you like it, that's good. So I got in and I loved it. I realized probably in private wealth, what resonated more with me was not investing the small and medium-sized business owners' wealth, but it was more about their stories of how they got there. And what I realized was it was a lot of those businesses that aren't glamorous on the outside. They were the glamorous businesses on the inside, right? Self-storage, I had a bit of an ego. I was like, I don't want to be a part of self-storage. That's not glamorous. I want to do startup. I want to do tech. I want to take on the world. And I realized that this resonated with all my skill sets. I loved marketing. I loved finance. I loved governance. I loved the legal aspects, the development side of things. It had everything. And now we've built it up over 10 years. I ended up taking over as general manager and then as CEO. My brother moved over to New Zealand. So we've had a lot of fun. We've been able to build the business to a much bigger business in terms of growth and assets, but also in the people. We've got about 70 people now in the business. So it's a lot of fun.
So then, with your amazing sporting background, and one of my favorite conversations is how has sport influenced the way that you operate in the business world? Has there been any sort of standout areas, whether it be leadership or teamwork, especially coming from water polo, which is all about team, that you've been able to sort of bring over? Has there been any crossover where you're like, this works well?
There's so many aspects of sport that you bring across. That's on a personal side, that's on a team side, team building aspect. It's about relationships, So it's all well and good if you've got the best product or the best service, but it's not going to sell itself. It always, I think fundamentally, when you talk about a structure of a business, you're talking about the people in the business, aren't you? You're not talking just about the products and services. Yes, that comes, but it always ends with people. And the same with sports. Even if you're an individual pursuing goal, it comes together with the team around you, doesn't it?
Of course, yeah.
And how much they're putting into you and vice versa, and resonating and bouncing and the relationships you forge. So I think there's a huge aspect that comes from that. I was also fortunate that I became president of Water Polo Australia, so I was the director for a number of years. And that was a difficult stage because people are passionate about sport, right? Yeah. And it's not tangible like a business that you can, in the end, go, right, no, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going. If you don't bring everyone along, you're gone. And that's really difficult. So I gained a lot as well from that aspect of sport that I've been able to bring across to the business too.
I got to tell you, getting ready for this, I even said to Laura, I said, I don't know how he's done it all. Like, you have 4 kids. You're starting up these random, water polo by the sea. You're the director and president of Water Polo Australia. You take on to become general manager and then CEO of this enormous company. And it's, how do you do it? It's
funny that
it's a very lazy question. I'm sorry, but it's kind of, it just has me intrigued.
But it's interesting because there's still a huge element of me that I feel that I'm not giving enough or not doing enough in certain aspects, right? Going back to that imposter syndrome that you said, I think no matter what you do or you look back and go, I've achieved this, or accolades, and whether that's good or not, I think it still comes back to, I don't know, you put big expectations on yourself. And that's actually a challenge in itself, right? No matter what you look back and go, yes, I've ticked those boxes. Sometimes you just you don't stop and really enjoy that moment.
It's a growth mindset, and it's a growth. Do you ever, sometimes I was saying to Laura, sometimes I'm envious of people that have the ability to find contentment a little bit more. I have to be somebody that go, I'm going to be content for a period of time, and I have to control it and own the contentment. And then this inner burn just starts going, no, I've got to do more. What else can I be doing? And don't get me wrong. First and foremost, I want to be a dad and I want to be a great husband. I get it. But there's this inner drive and sometimes I want it to turn off, but I've learned to manage it better. Do you kind of the same?
I'm 100% with you.
Yeah.
And the challenge can be is you go so hard and you push so hard, you push the limits of your capacity that it can fall apart sometimes, right?
Yeah.
You got to be really aware and cognizant of that.
Yeah.
And some aspects of your life can fall apart. Like, to be honest, right now, one aspect that I'm not happy with is my fitness. You know, isn't that ironic, right?
Yeah.
You've gone through your whole life. Everyone goes, oh yeah, you must be fit. You're a 4-time Olympian. No, I feel like the biggest imposter syndrome of all time. Yeah.
And everybody wants to take you on.
That's
the amount
it.
of people that want to go for a run with me, and I'm like, whoa, I'm 25 pounds heavier, 12 kilograms heavier, and not all fat. There's some. I've been trying to put on some muscle. Running isn't comfortable anymore.
Not at all.
And people want to, and then they run with you and they're half a stride in front the whole time. You're like,
exactly.
It's like,
and you almost don't want to do it right because you're like, no, that's not who I was.
Yeah.
That's not who I am.
And then Laura and I often say, I don't even know how we did what we did. I don't know who that person was.
No.
I'm like, who is that person that on my easy day, I would run 10K in the morning. I'd bike to Jamestown in Boulder, which is a 40K return with a 13-mile climb.
Crazy.
And then I'd do a 2K swim in the afternoon for a recovery day.
That's it.
Mate, that would be the biggest monumental day of my life in training right now, right? And it's just like, who is that person? It feels foreign. And so now, I don't know how you feel, and so I'm dragging on here, but
no, go.
Now I feel training for health is almost harder than training for performance.
Oh, good.
Right?
Yeah.
Like turning up every day and doing 40 minutes, 45 minutes or something just for health is almost harder. But I don't want a goal because I know who I become with a goal.
Oh, we're talking the same language here right now. I think there's something in here we've got, because you're right, because your whole life, your whole sport, your whole health, it wasn't about your health. Yes, you had to be healthy to perform, but it was about performance.
Absolutely.
It was a really strong goal there.
Yeah.
And you had a support team around you.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, for health, what is this? Well, I realized I don't like swimming at laps. Like, what am I doing laps
People
for
say,
my whole
Greg,
life?
you must love triathlon, swimming, biking and running. I said, no, I actually don't love swimming, biking and running. I love the community of triathletes.
Yes.
And I love trying to win, trying to be the best at something.
Yeah.
That is what drove me. It could have been tiddlywinks for whatever it was. I was a competitive bastard that wanted to try and be the best in the world at something, and happened to be swimming, biking and running.
Yeah, and by virtue of your competitiveness, all of that was an afterthought. The crazy stuff you were doing, right? It's
Absolutely.
like, no, I'm just going to do this because it's aligned with that goal.
Yeah.
That goal's taken away. It's like,
Well, now what am I going to do? And don't get me wrong, for everyone listening, I love the sport of triathlon. I'm passionate about it, but it's more about the community and the people.
Definitely.
You know, when I celebrate triathlon, I love to watch great performances, but do I want to swim, bike and run every day anymore? No. Actually, I enjoy lifting weights a little bit.
Oh, you're looking good.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Yeah, I wore a really tight shirt today. But mate, this has been absolutely fantastic. But before I let you go, I want to. I've got a couple of questions. First one: what would you tell your 16-year-old self now, looking back at your career?
My 16-year-old self, I'd probably say, embrace this journey. Like, embrace this journey. Enjoy those moments. The results, they're going to come, right? And they're not going to come. And that's okay.
That's right.
So I think that one definitely. Secondly, really spend time on the relationships in your life and the relationships around your life. So what you said about the community of triathlon, the same thing. I was in water polo, obviously, in a big way. Spend time, invest more in the relationships than just going after the outcome. So I think they're two of the major ones. And thirdly, it'll work out okay.
Yeah.
It'll work out okay no matter what.
Especially when you're 16, right?
Yeah.
And I've talked about on this show numerous times your insecurities,
Yeah.
trying to find your way. And, it's not an easy time in your life, that sort of 14, 15, 16, you're trying to prove yourself. And
that's right, yeah.
And it's like, it's going to be okay.
And I love the opportunity to speak to kids at that age, right?
Yeah.
Or kids that are just finishing up school. What should I do? This, that, and the other. My parents think I should get. I'm like, stop. If anything, the parents might not like to hear this. Go and travel overseas.
Yeah.
Go and lose your wallet in Madrid somewhere and have to work out.
Figure it out.
You figure it out, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So embrace that age and that freedom almost, right? And that growth.
Yeah. And being prepared to just live very, very affordably and just try and, try and just survive and those survival instincts kick in. I know, don't get me wrong, I don't want to do it all again,
No.
but it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
All right, next one. If you could have dinner with any 3 people, alive or dead, but non-family, who would it be?
3 people. All right. I'd probably get John Howard, and he was a prime minister, and it's not because of my political persuasion or anything like that, but he was a prime minister for a long period of time, a leader of our nation through some difficult times, through some good times. But what I've always found with him is the way that he's been able to articulate a problem, to simplify a problem so much so that then to find the solution becomes that much easier as well.
Wow.
You put everything into perspective.
Yeah.
And I like the way that he's always had his values of what he believes, the way of leadership, and he's stood true by those. So I think someone like John Howard, absolutely.
He was prime minister, what, 12 years? It was a decent stint.
He was a decent stint,
Yeah.
And controversially, I suppose, internationally at least, he brought in those gun laws that that meant that we didn't have automatic weapons and assault rifles and things like that. And that was actually quite a defining time, I think, for our nation through that period. Who else would I like? No, you've taken out family. That makes it really difficult because I'd love my wife here to be able to experience those things too.
I tell you what, Elka and I will wait the tables.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, I can't wait to catch up with you and Laura, by the way. So they're the other two.
That's very nice of you, mate.
I'd love to, I'd love to have sat down with Roger Federer at the age of about 16, 17.
Right before he beat Sampras. He beat Sampras at Wimbledon for his first.
That's right, yeah.
And he was 18 or 19.
3 or something, yeah.
Yeah. And
so just to see where he was at that stage. And, we've all read about him. We've all heard of him with interviews and things throughout his career. But I think it'd be really fascinating just to see where he was at that point in time. What forged him to that moment?
I love that. Roger Federer at 16,
16
17.
I 16,
I don't want
17.
him now. I want him in his youth.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the third one, it'd be a mix of, people that I love in my world today. I catch up with some great mentors in life. And it's someone who I do catch up with a lot, and it's probably Peter Overton. He's an Australian Channel 9 newsreader. He's just an absolute legend, an icon of Australia. But when you catch up with him one-on-one, when you catch up with him in a group, he's not. He's just like this humble individual that just resonates, a certain level of humility that I love, and a level of perspective that I love. And he's got some great stories. And, he's seen the world, and he's got some great stories, highs and lows. But it's probably someone like that who's really close to me, and I find a mentor of sorts.
I love that. Yeah. Well, you've got the journalist, you've got the politician, and the sports. That's a good dinner, mate. I'll definitely be waiting that table.
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, he was. You and Peter were on the Kingswood because your wife Olka has the Queenswood.
The Queenhood, and then
Queenhood. I'm sorry.
No, that's right. It was Kinghood
and Kinghood.
That's right. Yeah. So and look, we catch up with the other couple of guys that were there as well. I'd rotate them around in that table of 3, as you said.
Yeah.
But it was my wife puts together Queenhood. She's done 24 events, bringing women together. She gets speakers, and it's about positive, empowerment of sorts, but not in this feminist way per se. It's open, it's non-exclusive, but it's a way of empowering and supporting each other and all of the various stories. And so she decided that she wanted to do a Kinghood one. There's not enough necessarily out there for males and talk about males' issues, positive, negative, challenges and things. And I think it really resonated with people, and I think she's onto something.
Well, count me in on the next one.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're around.
You'll be speaking at the next one.
Speaking, all right. All right, you fly me in. Well, mate, all right, next one. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
The next 5 years, it is a strong and connected father. I will be father of, an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old by then. So I want to be a really strong, connected father. I want to be a great, loving husband. So I want to be more in love with my wife than I am today. I want to be more strategic in my profession. So in my leadership, I want to move to a higher level of strategy. So it's less of the focus on the operations. I think it's really important that you're across the details, but you can't sweat the small stuff. So it's moving away from that. And I want to be fitter, faster, and stronger. There you go.
I love that. I love that. That was really good, actually. I'm going to take that. All right, and last one on this group of four. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice. Ooh. I think, look, just the other day, I mean, I've had so many good pieces of advice and wisdom throughout my life, but it depends on where you are in a moment. And we were talking about before of, you know, you've got certain goals and ambitions and you want to move hard, etc. But I was in a phase where in work, things were kind of churning. I wasn't feeling like I'm progressing as quickly as I wanted to. And a friend and a great mentor, especially in business, he said to me, he goes, patience. This is the season for patience, right? It'll work out. It's going to be okay, but this is your season right now for patience. And that sounds kind of crazy and almost counterintuitive to great pieces of advice that I've had through life, but it really resonated with me. It took somebody to say to me, hey, just stop. It's okay. Where you are is okay.
But this is when you have this driven growth mentality, more and striving, you need that kind of advice that says, whoa.
Yeah.
Take a breath.
Absolutely.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I like that. That's really good. Let's finish with some rapid fire questions.
All right.
Are you ready? Are any fast twitch fighters
ready to go.
left?
Come on. Somewhere.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Favorite meal of the day, breakfast, lunch or dinner?
Breakfast. I know, counterintuitive, but I love it.
Can a vegetarian eat animal crackers?
Ooh, animal crackers.
No, can a vegetarian eat animal crackers?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said a can of vegetable or animal crackers. I'm like, I'll take animal crackers, whatever they are.
A can of vegetables. A can of vegetables or animal crackers. I think everyone would pick animal. No, it's meant to be a joke. It's like, can a vegetarian eat animal crackers? That's awesome.
Oh, I'd say yes, go for it. Why not?
All right. Favorite sport besides water polo?
Rugby union.
Did you play rugby at Scots?
I did.
Yeah.
I wasn't great. Well, I was great until about 11, and then it really went to, yeah.
Everyone grew around you, although you grew too, though. So. All right. One book you'd recommend?
Range by David Epstein.
It's a great book.
Yeah, I love that book.
Favorite movie of all time?
Favorite movie? Well, Forrest Gump for some reason. Always just comes at me. I just love it.
It's epic, isn't it? So many the stories within stories.
Yes.
Yeah. I always say the way I retired from sport, people are like, you know, I was 44 and I was racing in Beijing and I was over there and I got out of the swim and I jumped onto the bike and I was in the league where I was doing okay. And I got about a K into the bike and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I rode my bike to the hotel, which was nearby, and called the race director first and said, look, I've pulled out, you know, and you can keep my appearance money or whatever. They actually let me keep it, which was lovely. And then called my wife and said, I've retired. And she said, oh, me too. She'd raced that morning in Colorado. And it was like this Forrest Gump movie, like when he's running across America and he
just
goes,
stops.
I think I'm done now. And that was it. That was it. My bucket just went to empty and I never looked back. It was like this. I was very fortunate to be able to retire on my own terms like that. But it was a Forrest Gump moment.
That's such a cooler retirement story than mine or anyone else's. Just right in the middle of that race. I know, I'm done.
I was like, I don't want to, I'm empty. I don't want to push anymore.
That's cool.
And that was it.
Yeah.
All right, wait. Favorite piece of technology you own?
Ooh, favorite piece of technology. It used to be all sports tech and all sorts of stuff, but I love my car stacker. I bought this car stacker. I've got an old Ford Mustang, and we didn't have the room to do a double garage, so instead I raised the roof and put in a car stacker, so it sits in the top of the roof most of the time.
I tell you, when you just went and showed me it, it's like James Bond. It's like this. It's like this. It comes down from the ceiling, as long as it doesn't crush your beautiful mountain bikes.
That's right. Or the kids' bikes. It's not as glamorous as mountain bikes.
No, that is really cool. Here's a quick big one for you. Is cereal a soup?
Is cereal a soup? It depends how you define soup. Jeez, I know this is supposed to be a really quick answer, but
this is a tough
it's
one.
definitely not a soup. I think soups have got to be heated, even if they had cold afterwards. Whereas cereal, you just don't have it cold.
There's plenty of cold soups out there, though.
Yeah, I know, but that's after they've been heated, surely.
No. Cold soup is a thing.
Oh, I did have it in Hungary once.
Yeah.
I thought that was more like.
Oh, no, mate.
Okay.
Cold soup's a thing. Like you can.
Well, I'm saying no.
Okay. If you were arrested with no explanation, what would your friends and family assume you had done? This is not a fast one either.
Oh, this is definitely not a fast. I reckon they'd have to assume some kind of white collar crime. Or maybe I think, maybe I'm putting tickets on myself for being some level of intelligence to have white collar crime. But I did that to my wife once. I rang her. I'm like, oh, Elk, I can't say much. I've got the federal police in here. We've done some stuff at work. And she's like, you're joking. I said, no, look, just don't say anything. Everything will be fine. I'm sure it's okay.
Run.
And I got her. And she was good.
You got her.
And I'm like, wait, hang on a second. So you don't trust me?
She actually went with it going, oh, yeah.
She did.
That sounds about right. She's not surprised at all. Oh, I love it. All right. And last one, best decade of music.
Oh, I reckon it's less about the music than the experiences you had with the music.
Oh, well done.
And so I think it was like, the early 2000s. I was out of school. I had some freedom. I was living overseas and stuff, getting into a bit of the dance music. Eminem had come onto the scene as well. So there was some hip hop and rap and everything. Definitely early 2000s.
Wow. All right. Well, you and I can probably, if it's early 2000s where they're doing remixes of the 80s, that's the kind of music I'm into. I love when they grab a great 80s song, they remix it with a good beat.
True. Yes.
And that is kind of 2000-y type music,
100%.
isn't it? Yeah. Mate. All right. What's next for you?
What's next? It's probably getting towards that 5-year plan that you made me think about. I think it's it's in a professional sense really elevating our business.
Yeah.
It's we're in a phase right now of what growth looks like, really working through what growth looks like, and to me that's really exciting. In terms of myself, it's a focus on being faster, fitter, and stronger. It's what we talked about, prioritizing and getting on top of that health. And that's a real challenge for me.
Especially through your 40s and 50s. It's, I think if you can do your 40s and 50s reasonably well with health, it'll help the 60s and 70s a lot.
Yeah.
And so it is prioritizing that health. It has to.
Well, I had my first checkup literally with the doctor this morning. Checkup. I think it's the first time I've been to the doctor in like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I've never been to the doctor.
I know. Well, who goes to the doctor for a checkup, right?
Yeah. Unless you're going to Australian Olympic teams and things, they used to test you and stuff.
Yes, that's right.
That was about it.
But it was good. She was saying the same things. It's like, okay, if you focus on this, this, and this, it's about longevity.
Yeah.
Right? So
you know what I found is just sidetracking you, but I found if I can just do 40 minutes of something each day.
Yeah.
Right, and that can be stair stepper, it can be lifting some weights, maybe a little jog. Running around Sydney's amazing.
Oh, beautiful.
I know why when I come to Sydney, running is just so great. Even when I go to Boston, I like running in Boston too. Florida's a bit tough. I find Florida for running a bit. But then I'm in a great gym there, and they got the sauna and the ice bath.
Oh, nice. Gym. Yeah.
And I use the sauna as much as health, but it's also conversations with other guys.
Yes.
And I can't stand the guys who bring their phones in and listen.
Oh, you can't do that.
But you have the 5 a.m. 5:30 a.m. group in there. It's all a bunch of guys that are all, and you're all just, you talk about the kinghood that you have. It's almost like you have this brotherhood in the sauna. So I use it for that. And I found to do that every morning to start my day has been a nice way to start the day. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic because you really get power and energy off others around you, right?
I'm big time like that.
Big time. And I just last week started taking up some boxing again with a couple of mates as we drop off the kids for swimming. We've got an hour, 5 a.m. What do you do? And we started doing that. Oh my gosh. I was on fire. I walked into the office. They're like, what are you on? I'm like, I'm on life. I'm back. You feel good about it. And it's being around people too.
Yeah.
And the more, sometimes you can get into this spiral that you into yourself and insular, but get around people. Gosh, you always feel better. And exercise.
Get around people and realize that you got this short life. It really is going to be short, and you better be having some fun along the way.
100%.
You can build businesses and you can raise children, but it's like you got to, I don't know, be present every chance you get. I like to start every one of my day, and I often do this in the sauna. I practice my gratitude.
Yes.
I put my vision of what I want to become,
Love it.
and I manifest that. So I go through that a little bit, and then I always finish with, "Today could be your last."
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, so strong.
And not just your last, it could be a loved one's last. And so you start to think, be present with your kids, be present with your missus, be present with your mum and dad, whatever.
Yeah.
Because you never know. And
100%.
I find if I can start every day like that, suddenly if you got a big stress in work or whatever, everything changes in perspective, right?
All perspective, especially when you start the day with gratitude.
Yeah.
Can you touch upon a bit of that vision that you spoke about? Can I get that out of you?
You want to know my vision?
Yeah.
Oh, my vision... My vision is a bit very, very similar to yours, actually. And I think we were talking about this when we were at the beach. I think first and foremost is to be the best man I can be.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Yep,
and if that can be a man that other men would aspire to be like, that's kind of the goal, right? It's like, and being a dad now, that means, provide and protect. If you want to go a bit ancestral, it's kind of provide and protect. And what does that mean? Well, provide means I have a great roof over their head and I'm providing so they don't need for anything. They can want for things.
But there's provision in their life.
There's
You're
provision.
Providing those needs, those basic needs at least. Plus.
Yeah.
Plus.
Yeah. And then protect for me means when I turn up, I'm present and I'm there and I'm around as much as I can be. And so if I have to travel, I minimize travel away from the family as much as possible. I'm there and I'm around all the time as much as I can be.
Yeah.
Within healthiness.
Yeah.
And that it also means being healthy on the daily, but also I'm an older dad. I'm 51 with a 5 and a 3-year-old. Longevity. So making sure what am I doing to try and be around for the next 30 years, that I can help or be there as a dad for my kids. So when I vision and want to manifest, those are my big things. Things like work or how I make that income or what I'm doing for my health. The specifics of it don't matter so much as just the character I want to be,
That's perfect. That vision, I love that because that's, I think, we were touching upon this recently, right? And that is, what is it to be a man today in today's world? And I think you've described it perfectly there, right? You've got that vision there of, even if you're not a father, it's being a father of sorts, right?
I like that.
To the children or to the younger ones
being
in your
role
life.
model.
Being a role model, exactly. Being the best man that you can be. And it's being present, as you said, being present in your family's life, but in those people around you, their lives as well, your friends, your colleagues, etc. It's having a vision of what that man looks like and putting character at the forefront of that rather than accolades. I think when you can judge yourself based upon your character, you're probably going to be a whole lot more successful than thinking that business profits will be, your definition of success.
No, exactly. That's the only scoreboard. But mate, I think that's a really great place to wrap up. That was well said.
So good.
You just crushed that.
No,
that
you crushed
That was a lot of
that.
fun. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, mate, it's such a, it was crazy. I'd said to Laura, when we get to Australia, I'll bring all my podcast gear. I'd love to do some interviews. And you were on one of the pile. I've got a couple of others that I'll hope to sit down and do in person, which is really cool to do in person.
Very cool.
And we'd all been a bit sick the first week here, and so I kind of hadn't reached out to anybody, wasn't feeling great. And then boom, there you are, down at the beach.
And we get straight into it, don't we? We were just talking life, manhood, everything, right? It was cool.
And that was really cool. And so to be able to sit down on a Monday when you probably should be working, you spend all this time. We couldn't find I forgot some of my equipment. We had to run to the store, come back.
We made it work.
But we made it happen, mate.
That's it.
We made it happen. And this was really, really fun. And so I really appreciate you, buddy.
I've really enjoyed this. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome, mate. For everybody else, you can find all the show notes and timestamps and everything else at bennettendurance.com/media.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for listening. If you enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Patreon page or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.